Something has changed in sports, not in the rules, not in the score, in the way it feels. If you've been watching closely over the past 5 years, you've felt it. The way people talk about Formula One now, versus how they talked about it in 2018. The way golf suddenly became interesting, the way athletes are being filmed differently, not just on the field, but in hallways, in private moments, in the spaces where cameras weren't supposed to be. This isn't an accident. Netflix entered sports with a camera and a thesis that the real story isn't the game. It's what happens when the game ends and everyone stays in the room. They tested this on Formula One. Drive to Survive premiered in 2019. At the time, Formula One was struggling in America. Races happened at odd hours. The sport felt European, technical, inaccessible. Netflix embedded with teams for a full season. They filmed the arguments. They filmed engineers lying. They filmed the moment when the driver realizes his career might be ending. Within 3 years, Formula One's US audience grew by 40%. Races started selling out. A sport that felt like a relic became cultural currency. This wasn't journalism. This was something else. They did it again with golf. Full swing turned putting into theater. Professional golfers, famously private, famously controlled, agreed to let cameras into their worst moments, and the sport changed. Younger audiences appeared. Sponsors paid attention. Then tennis. Then cycling. Then professional wrestling, though wrestling was already halfway there. Each time, the pattern repeated. Embed, access, narrative, transformation. And now, there's only one major American sport that hasn't fully opened its doors, the NFL. Let's be clear about what Netflix is doing. They aren't making highlight reels. They aren't conducting interviews for 60-second clips. They're changing the fundamental relationship between the audience and the sport. Before Drive to Survive, Formula One was a results-based product. You watched the race, someone won, you checked the standings, that was the experience. After Drive to Survive, Formula One became a character-driven narrative. You watched the race to see if the team principal you'd grown attached to would finally beat his rival. You cared about pit crew drama. You knew which engineer was under pressure to keep his job. The race was the same. The product was completely different. This is what Netflix figured out. Sports are soap operas that happen to have scoreboards. The scoreboard matters, but the scoreboard is a test result. What people actually want is to understand what happens between tests. The pressure, the relationships, the tiny moments that predict collapse before it's visible. Formula One resisted this initially. Team principals didn't want cameras and strategy meetings. Drivers didn't want their low moments broadcast. But Netflix made an offer. We'll make you famous. We'll turn engineers into celebrities. We'll create storylines that make people care about your sport even when there's no race happening. And it worked. Golf made the same calculation. The PGA Tour was losing relevance. Younger audiences didn't watch. Then Full Swing arrived, and suddenly professional golfers were crying on camera, admitting the self-doubt, revealing the mental warfare that happens between shots. It wasn't about golf anymore. It was about what golf does to people. This is the formula. Access leads to character, which creates drama, and results in a cultural shift. And it works because audiences don't actually want perfection. They want to see the cost of perfection. They want to see what it takes. They want to watch someone try to hold it together and see the exact moment when they coup you ain't. Netflix monetizes that moment. So why hasn't the NFL fully opened the door? It's not because Netflix isn't interested. It's not because the NFL doesn't have stories. It's because the NFL operates differently than every other sport Netflix has conquered. Formula One is controlled by a single entity. One negotiation unlocks every team. Golf is governed by the PGA Tour. One agreement, full access. The NFL is 32 separate franchises with 32 separate ownership groups with 32 different levels of comfort with transparency. And transparency is what Netflix requires. The NFL isn't afraid of cameras. It's afraid of losing control of the story. Netflix did get into the NFL. Quarterback launched in 2023. It followed Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota through a season. It was well produced, it got attention, but it wasn't Drive to Survive, because quarterback was player-focused. It was individuals agreeing to access, but it wasn't what it couldn't be was a full team embedded for a full season with cameras in the building when things go wrong. That's the difference. The Drive to Survive wasn't about individual drivers, it was about team dysfunction, strategy failures, political infighting, the moments when leadership breaks down and everyone's trying not to show it. Netflix got close with the NFL. They made receiver next, following pass catchers, but these are previews. Proof of concept. Netflix is testing whether NFL audiences will watch this kind of content. The answer is yes. The real question is, would an NFL team actually say yes to full access? If Netflix were to do a full-team, full-season NFL docuseries, it would need the perfect franchise, not the best team, not the worst team, but the team at the most interesting psychological crossroads, the team where tension already exists, where expectations are high enough to matter but unstable enough to fracture. The Cincinnati Bengals are intriguing, a team that's been close, so close, but hasn't finished. That creates internal pressure. Joe Burrow is a star. The window is open but closing. The question is whether the Bengals, historically private, would ever allow this level of access. But the team that makes the most sense, the team at the exact intersection of drama, talent, access, and timing is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles just collapsed. They started last season 10-1 and then disintegrated. Nobody knows exactly why. Was it the quarterback, the coach, internal politics, fatigue? That uncertainty is perfect for Netflix. Because Netflix doesn't need answers. They need questions. They need a team asking itself what went wrong and trying to prove it was an anomaly. The Eagles have star power, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, a fan base that will dissect every frame, and an owner who's shown willingness to embrace media projects before. If Netflix gets the Eagles, or a team like them, the NFL is about to change, in the same way Formula One changed. Not the rules, not the schedule, but the relationship between audience and product. This isn't about whether Netflix makes a docuseries about an NFL team. This is about what happens when they do, because once one team says yes, the pressure shifts. Other teams start wondering if they're missing an opportunity. Players start realizing that being on a Netflix series might be worth more than a playoff appearance in terms of personal brand. And the NFL, historically protective, historically controlled, starts losing control of its own narrative. The NFL is the last major sport where the league still controls the story, where press conferences are managed, where access is limited, where the locker room stays closed. But streaming doesn't work that way. Streaming needs the locker room. It means the moment after the loss when everyone's pretending to be fine. It needs the tension that builds over weeks, not just the explosion on Sunday. And once Netflix, or Amazon, or Apple gets that access, the NFL stops being a sport you watch on Sundays and becomes a story you follow all week. Traditional broadcasters can't compete with that. They're built for live events. They are not built for narrative arcs that span months. They're not built to make you care about a backup linebacker's contract negotiation. Streaming is, this is the shift. Sports are becoming content, not just during games, all the time, and the NFL, despite its power, despite its ratings, is starting to realize it can't avoid this forever. One team will say yes, then another, then the league itself will negotiate some version of what Formula One did: full access. Every team, curated into a season-long narrative. When that happens, the NFL won't just be a league, it'll be a show, and nobody, least of all the NFL, knows if that's a good thing yet. Every sport thought it was different, until it wasn't.